Hello, today we're going to see a modest proposal by Jonathan Swift. He was a clergyman, a member of the church, but he was also politically committed, famous for Gulliver's Travels and modest proposal. It was published in 1729 and is a satirical work. It's not a novel, it's a pamphlet, it's an essay. Now, what was the reason for that pamphlet? First of all, we need to understand the condition of Ireland. As you can see, Ireland was the first country to be converted to Christianity in the beginning of the 5th century, and then the Middle Ages, there was a British control, involvement in the history of the country. In Henry VIII of England, a Protestant, so not a Catholic, declared himself King of Ireland. And during the Commonwealth, Oliver Cromwell very cruelly destroyed the Irish opposition to his rule. And by 1703, 90% of the land was controlled by the Protestants. Not only, there were a number of acts or laws that prevented Catholics from having arms, restricted their right to education, stopped them buying land, so increasing their lands, their properties, and prohibited Catholics from being part of the army, holding a public office, becoming a member of the parliament, voting. So you see, they were second-class citizens. What to do? Swift was not a politician. He was an intellectual, most of all. What could he do? Many people had protested against the situation in the past, but with no result. And so he decided to do something very, very interesting. He chose to attack a real problem, proposing an imaginary solution, a provocative solution, an absurd, extreme solution, a shocking solution, a solution so shocking that could move the reader to do something. This is a satirical literary work. What is a satire? A satire is a literary work that attacks specific abuses, the stupidity of people, imperfection, in particular of those who have the power. How is it done? It's done with verbal irony, so ridiculing the person that is target, meaning saying one thing but meaning another, or often the opposite. Just the title, a modest proposal, is ironic because this proposal is everything but modest. It's extreme. Even if Swift was not a Catholic, he was an Irish, and he felt he was close to his homeland. And so he wanted to do something, contribute to reduce the exploitation and oppression of his country by the Protestant British. What was basically the problem? The problem was that the English controlled most of the land. They imposed taxes, and so the native, the Irish, had to pay all they amassed a lot. And sometimes it was too much. Don't forget, in those years there was also famine, not much food because of problems with the agriculture, with the crops, and so many families felt like starving. And there was a number of them that emigrated to the United States because it was impossible to continue to live in Ireland. We are in the age of reason. We know that in the 18th century rationality was very important. We saw, for example, in Defoe how the use of logic, rationality was the only way to improve his condition. Here we have the other extreme. Swift believes that reason can be mad, can be insane. And here is an example. Here he, in the most proposal, he uses rationality in order to achieve, to demonstrate an absurd solution, but not done logically. I'm going to show you how the structure of this pump is also in the form an imitation of a scientific art. Today, a scientific article should be written in a certain way. For example, should be the title that describes in a few words the content paper. Then it is called abstract. It is a short synthesis of the article. Then the following section is the introduction, definition of the problem. what is the problem, and so the purpose of the investigation. Then follows previous literature, a reference to other investigations, other articles written on the same topic. And then you have, before you start describing your research, you have to demonstrate the relevance, the importance of what you are going to do or what you have done. And then, based on research, you describe the results of your investigation and your conclusions. Now, let's listen to the first part of, it is the most important part of a modest proposal. Pay attention to the intonation of the reader, because this is a satirical text. And if you pay attention to how the reader puts more emphasis, underlines some specific words in order to let us hear, let us understand the ironic use of that word, it can help us to understand much better this text.
A modest proposal for preventing the children of poor people in Ireland from being a burden to their parents or country, and for making them beneficial to the public. By Jonathan Swift, 1729. It is a melancholy object to those who walk through this great town or travel in the country, when they see the streets, the roads, and cabin doors crowded with beggars of the female sex, followed by 3, 4, or 6 children, all in rags, and importuning every passenger for an alms. These mothers, instead of being able to work for their honest livelihood, are forced to employ all their time in strolling to beg sustenance for their helpless infants, who, as they grow up, will either turn thieves for want of work, or leave their dear native country to fight for the Pretender in Spain, or sell themselves to the Barbados.
The complete title is Modest Proposal for Avoiding a Problem to Families, Inhabitants, and to the country. Not only, but with a solution, so the problem can become from a disadvantage an advantage. We expect to read something really interesting, necessary. And here there is the first part. So it begins describing the problem. It's very sad to see in Dublin or in Ireland a lot of women walking the streets with 3, 4, 6 children, all in rags, all in very poor old clothes or money, alms. Why are they doing this? Because they cannot find a job. They don't have a job and are forced to ask for money, beg for money to feed their babies, their infants. And these infants, these children, when they grow up, they become thieves or leave Ireland, and maybe they become mercenaries for Spain or become pirates.
I think it is agreed by all parties that this prodigious number of children in the arms, or on the backs, or at the heels of their mothers, and frequently of their fathers, is, in the present deplorable state of the kingdom, a very great additional grievance, and therefore whoever could find out a fair, cheap, and easy method of making these children sound, useful members of the Commonwealth, would deserve so well of the public as to have his statue set up for a preserver of the nation. But my intention is very far from being confined to provide only for the children of professed beggars. It is of a much greater extent, and shall take in the whole number of infants at a certain age who are born of parents, in effect, as little able to support them as those who demand our charity in the streets.
So why is this problem so relevant? Because there are so many children in this condition that they are a burden to the society. And so if we could find a solution to this problem and make these children, instead of being a disadvantage, a burden, sound and useful members of the Commonwealth. So citizens who are in good condition and useful, do something for the community, for the Commonwealth, then, well, the person with that idea, he should be considered a hero of his country, a savior. This purpose is not only to involve just beggars, but all children that are in families, but all children whose families cannot provide enough food, clothes for them.
As to my own part, having turned my thoughts for many years upon this important subject, and maturely weighed the several schemes of other projectors, I have always found them grossly mistaken in the computation. It is true, a child just dropped from its dam may be supported by her milk for a solar year with little other nourishment, at most not above the value of 2 silver, which the mother may certainly get, or the value in scraps, by her lawful occupation of begging, and it is exactly at 1 year old that I propose to provide for them, in such a manner as instead of being a charge upon their parents or the parish, or wanting food and raiment for the rest of their lives, they shall on the contrary contribute to the feeding, and partly to the clothing of many thousands.
Let's see now the previous literature. Notice here the irony. This solution hasn't come developed in 1 or 2 days. No. For many years I've been thinking about this problem, and I have analyzed several different proposals by other people, and I have discovered that their numbers were wrong. The computation was wrong. And now it begins to describe how much a family spends for a child from the moment he is born to the moment when he is 1 year old. His proposal is this: the family, the mother, doesn't need much money to feed a child, because most of all she can breastfeed and give just scraps, just little food that she can find with her activity of begging. And so the problem is after 1 year. After 1 year, children become more expensive. They need more money for them to be raised. And so this proposal will try to avoid that children become a burden to the community.
There is, likewise, another great advantage in my scheme, that it will prevent those voluntary abortions, and that horrid practice of women murdering their bastard children, alas, too frequent among us, sacrificing the poor innocent babes, I doubt, more to avoid the expense than the shame, which would move tears and pity in the most savage and inhuman breast.
His proposal will have also other advantages, side effects. For example, will prevent voluntary abortions, the practice of many women to eliminate the child they have conceived outside the marriage.
The number of souls in this kingdom being usually reckoned 1.5 million, of these I calculate there may be about 200,000 couple whose wives are breeders, from which number I subtract 30,000 couples who are able to maintain their own children, although I apprehend there cannot be so many under the present distresses of the kingdom. But this being granted, there will remain 170,000 breeders. I again subtract 50,000 for those women who miscarry or whose children die by accident or disease within the year. There only remains 120,000 children of poor parents annually born. The question therefore is, how this number shall be reared and provided for, which, as I have already said, under the present situation of affairs, is utterly impossible by all the methods hitherto proposed, for we can neither employ them in handicraft or agriculture. We neither build houses, I mean in the country, nor cultivate land. They can very seldom pick up a livelihood by stealing till they arrive at 6 years old, except where they are of towardly parts, although I confess they learn the rudiments much earlier, during which time they can, however, be properly looked upon only as probationers, as I have been informed by a principal gentleman in the country of Cavan, who protested to me that he never knew above 1 or 2 instances under the age of 6, even in a part of the kingdom so renowned for the quickest proficiency in that art.
And now, as in every scientific article, there's supporting evidence based on logic, on numbers, on statistics. Don't forget that if you use statistics, people will believe what you are saying. The problem is, if they tell you that 20% of women die of a certain disease, what are we talking about? 20% of the women in the world? 20% in France, in Italy? 20% of the women that have been analyzed? Does the number include also women in Africa, in Australia? What age? So you see, numbers are ambiguous. And so here, Swift uses this fact that statistics can be manipulated logically to convey, to provoke a reaction to support his absurd proposal. So he starts simply saying that in Ireland there is a population of 1.5 million, and there are about 200,000 couples whose wives can have children. Of these 200,000 couples, you will have to subtract 30,000 couples. Why? Because they have enough money to support themselves. What remains is 170,000 women. Let's remove from this number 50,000 women to include women who miscarry, who cannot complete their pregnancy, or whose children die before reaching 1 year of age. So in the end, we have statistically 120,000 children, poor parents, born every year. The problem is, how can we rear, how can we support, provide for this large number? What can we do with these children? They cannot work because they are too young. They almost never find a way to survive themselves, to be independent, to contribute economically until they arrive at 6 years old, except when they learn to steal before that age.
I am assured by our merchants that a boy or a girl before 12 years old is no saleable commodity, and even when they come to this age they will not yield above 3 pounds, or 3.5 crowns at the most on the exchange, which cannot turn to account either to the parents or kingdom the charge of nutriment and rags having been at least 4 times that value. I shall now therefore humbly propose my own thoughts, which I hope will not be liable to the least objection. I have been assured by a very knowing American of my acquaintance in London that a young, healthy child, well nursed, is at a year old a most delicious, nourishing, and wholesome food, whether stewed, roasted, baked, or boiled, and I make no doubt that it will equally serve in a fricassee or a ragout. I do, therefore, humbly offer it to public consideration that of the 120,000 children already computed, 20,000 may be reserved for breed, whereof only 1/4 part to be males, which is more than we allow sheep, black cattle, or swine, and my reason is, that these children are seldom the fruits of marriage, a circumstance not much regarded by our savages, therefore 1 male will be sufficient to serve 4 females. that the remaining 100,000 may, at a year old, be offered in sale to the persons of quality and fortune throughout the kingdom, always advising the mother to let them suck plentifully in the last mouth, so as to render them plump and fat for a good table. A child will make 2 dishes at an entertainment for friends, and when the family dines alone, the fore or hind quarter will make a reasonable dish, and seasoned with a little pepper or salt, will be very good boiled on the 4th day, especially in winter.
And now his computation continues in a very precise way. A boy or a girl before 12 years old is not a commodity, it's not something you can buy or sell, because they have no value. The money necessary to feed them for 12 years is 4 times more than the money they can earn, they can gain finding some activity during those 12 years. And now he's ready to make his proposal, and he believes there will be no objections. This is an ironic text at the beginning of the 18th century. Now, what was the condition of North America? It was not the country we know today. Today, when we think of technology, this thing comes from America. We, in general, believe it is first rate, very advanced technologically, and so on. But at the beginning of the 18th century, North America was a wild place, and they were considered savages. And so here, when he refers to an American as a source of information, scientific information, is wrong. It's not a source of information we can depend upon. Anyway, he's been told that child, well nursed, when he reaches the age of 1 year, he is a delicious, nourishing, and complete food. In any way you cook this food, roast, baked inside the oven, or boiled in hot water, and maybe is also very good fricassee or ragu with sauces. And now, always ironically, says, I humbly offer to the public consideration. Now, his proposal starts from what they used to do with animals, with pigs, swine. He says, of 120,000 children we have every year, now of these children, 20,000 we live for breed, for reproduction. So they grow up, they can have more children. And of these 20,000, only 1/4 of them, that is 5,000, should be male. And this is more that is generally done with animals, because with sheep or swine, with pigs, a male pig is kept alive for more than 4 female pigs, because one can reproduce, can mate with more female animals. So you see, here there is a logical thing. He's taking what was the habit with animals and he applies the same logic to human beings. Now, the remaining 100,000, when they are 1 year old, they should be offered in sale, sold to persons of quality and fortune. Now careful, who are people of quality and fortune? Quality are those who belong to the high social classes, and fortune who are rich. So the Protestant British landowners, those who control the country. And also here, there is a suggestion that is ironic, always advising the mother to give more milk to the child in the last month, so to make it plump, heavier, and so be sold for more money. If you buy a child, if you have a party with friends, you can have 2 dishes. Or if you dine alone with no friends, you can use the fore or the hind part, that is the front or the back of the child, for a dish, and then seasoned with spices. You can keep it, because there were no fridges, so you had to use salt and spices to preserve food, even after 4 days, especially in winter, when it's cold.
I have reckoned upon a medium that a child just born will weigh 12 pounds, and in a solar year, if tolerably nourished, increaseth to 28
On average,
pounds.
the child when is born is about 12 pounds. 1 pound is 450 grams, let's say almost half a kilo. And in 1 year, if giving enough food, it will increase his weight up to 28 pounds.
I grant this food will be somewhat dear, and therefore very proper for landlords who, as they have already devoured most of the parents, seem to have the best title to the children. Infant's flesh will be in season throughout the year, but more plentiful in March and a little before and after, for we are told by a grave author, an eminent French physician, that fish being a prolific diet, there are more children born in Roman Catholic countries about 9 months after Lent than at any other season. Therefore, reckoning a year after Lent, the markets will be more glutted than usual, because the number of popish infants is at least 3 to 1 in this kingdom, and therefore it will have one other collateral advantage, by lessening the number of papists among us.
I consider that this food, child, will be expensive, dear, and for this reason, logically, only the landlords, the rich people of the country, who are English, will have the possibility to pay for that. Not only, notice here the irony, but they also are the best people to buy these children because they have already, metaphorically, eaten their parents. That is, they have already exploited the parents of these children. So, anyway, they've eaten already, devoured, eaten their parents, they will continue and eat also, literally, their children. We are at the end of this part. And here there is a reference to the Catholic Church in Ireland, a country governed by Protestants. So he's saying here that this flesh, the meat, these children to be sold will be available throughout the year, but will be more in abundance in March and a little before and after that. Because we are told by a serious writer, a French physician, French doctor. Now, apparently, if you say a French physician, okay, a French doctor must be a serious scientist. In reality, he's referring to Rabelais, who wrote a satirical text. So also Rabelais, who was a doctor, a physician, but he was ironic, satirical, like Swift, said that a fish is a prolific diet. So, as you know, especially in the past, Catholics had to eat fish in the period around Easter. But if fish is a food that stimulates sexual desires, then Roman Catholic families will have more children than Protestant ones. And so, for this reason, during after Lent, after the period around Easter, the markets will have more children than usual. But what children? Popish infants, that is, children of Catholic families, or families who follow the Pope. And the Catholic children are the majority in this country, 3 to 1. And so, in the end, there will be another collateral advantage with my proposal. We will reduce the number of Papists or Catholic people, Catholics in Ireland. Of course, is ironic. So, as you have seen, this pamphlet, this modest proposal, is quite biting, it's quite aggressive in its approach to the topic, to the problem. There is a reference to the culture of the period, the fact that mathematics, logic could solve any problem, but here we see that computation, numbers, statistics can be manipulated and insane. We can arrive at an insane, illogical conclusion just using numbers with correct computation, but at the end is wrong. Swift is saying, don't just depend on rationality, re-examine your priority, use also other parts of your soul to face a problem, understand there's a problem. It's very important to understand the form, now in a comment, this attack against the controlling British class of Protestants in Ireland, the exploitation of Irish people, in particular Catholic Irish people. But is very important, also the form, the language used here, the style used here. And you should be able to understand how the proposal is introduced, is discussed, is supported and presented, and all the advantages that are described to have, to be along with this proposal. The side effects, like for example, the reduction of the number of Catholics in Ireland, the increased wealth of the already rich Protestant landlords, and so on. This Mo's proposal has been a model for other satirical works in the following centuries, and so it's very important to understand how a satirical work is organized, what kind of language we should use. Sometimes, if you want to attack a real problem, this can be a possibility, making fun of those who have created the problem and can now solve the problem, in order to shock, because people give sometimes for granted as normal certain situations, and so we need sometimes to provoke an emotional, intellectual reaction. And this is an example. We are shocked by his proposal, eating children, little children, innocent children, the ways that he has proposed, like animals. But after publishing this pamphlet, when Swift returned to Ireland, he was welcomed as a hero of the country, because Irish people were proud of Swift for having contributed to describe in such a way the terrible condition at the moment. Thank you.